Welcome to Equipping Leaders, a podcast where I share and discuss resources, tools, and information to equip leaders to build creative, cohesive teams through culture and leader development. Welcome to the Equipping Leaders podcast. I'm your host, Natasha, and today I am sharing a conversation that I had with retired Major General Mark Stammer on morale and seeing people as individuals. This is part of the Dwight Eisenhower character study, and while in this episode we do not talk about Ike, the leadership traits and concepts that were prevalent in Eisenhower's time and that he leveraged are still prevalent in many areas today. While Mark Stammer is a retired military officer, these concepts can be used across industries.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm going to have you introduce yourself and tell us your style of leadership.
Okay, my name is Mark Stammer. I married my high school sweetheart, and together we have 2 children and 2 grandchildren. My leadership style and application of that leadership style are a blended compilation of all that I've learned, studied, witnessed, experimented. It reflects and includes theories, concepts, words, phrases, and application methods attributed to many different people, leaders, authors, and so on. I'll not attribute any particular phrase or concept to any original author or whatever. My application of all of those texts, verses, phrases, styles, they are uniquely my own to me, and they're uniquely mine in my contemporary environment. I'm a reflection of what the life I lived, right? But I apply it in a unique way. I'm also a positive and resourceful member and leader on a team, while also contributing to the teams of which I'm part. We always have to remember, leaders depend upon followers, depend upon leaders. And you can't be a good leader if you're not a good follower, so I know I'm always on a team of teams. I like to be involved with people of character in the pursuit of meaningful goals and objectives. I work hard, but that doesn't mean I didn't have fun while accomplishing the mission. Great teams really can do both, right? I invest in people. I'm sincerely interested in not just their success, but also their lives. And I think if you come at it from that perspective, I think you have a more genuine relationship with the people you serve with. If I had to typify my leadership style, I would say it is a mixed or a balanced style with strong hints of coach, autocracy, and a little bit of democracy. The key is to know what your organization and situation needs at that time, at that particular issue, and then deliver it. Sometimes it is democracy, sometimes it's autocracy, most times it's just coach.
So something that you said in there about in order to be a good leader, you have to be a good follower. And I think that we don't put enough emphasis on followership and how valuable that is to the team dynamic. Everybody's so worried about titles and who's leading and who's doing this, when really we could all learn how to just be a great team member.
I don't know of any good leader that was not also a good follower. I don't know those people. And it's not hard being a good follower. It's you just give to someone else all those things and attributes and characteristics you expect from those on your team.
Was there a specific event that empowered you to identify yourself as a leader, or something that occurred where you're like, I'm the leader, or I'm the person in charge here?
Well, as you know, I enlisted in the Army right out of high school. And while serving in an infantry company, I was introduced to a lot of different leaders with wildly different backgrounds, perspectives, and leadership styles. My company first sergeant was a Vietnam vet. My company commander was a West Pointer, had never been to Vietnam. And so we had a very eclectic leadership team in our company. While none of those guys seemed to be perfect, I was determined that I wanted to be among them, among the leadership team. You know, I was constantly looking at my squad leader going, why are we doing this? Why are we doing it that way? So I wanted to be among those leaders. I wanted to develop my own style and lead people through challenge and opportunities. And I drew upon that initial experience in that rifle platoon throughout my entire career. Leading in combat was also a very defining experience for me that changed how I would do things for the rest of my time in the Army after that, and to this day, in fact.
So based on your own experience, how do you define morale?
So morale. individual attitude, a feeling of well-being, confidence and personal opportunities to contribute to something meaningful and lasting. And I always caution people when they talk about morale. Morale is an individual thing, but it is the most crucial component to the collective, which is esprit de corps. And so if you have great morale in your company, but no esprit de corps, there's a problem. If you have a lot of esprit de corps and no morale, there's probably different problems. So it's crucial that you look at both, but I think morale is more important because it allows you to focus on the individual. And if the individuals are happy and getting after it, having meaningful contributions to the successes of the team, then esprit is generally going to come with it.
I really appreciate that perspective, because a lot of times when we try to look at people as a group, the things that of course motivate one don't motivate everyone. And it's like when people consider awards or rewards, it's not a reward if it's not something that I value. So that's not going to help me navigate the organization or feel valued by the organization if it's not something that's valuable to me. So I really love that perspective of morale being individualistic. So some assignments, both in the military and outside of it, are really long or taxing. So how do you maintain morale during those assignments, both yours and others?
I have a couple different takes on that. One is you need to have the powers to manage your year. And you've heard me say this and use this demographic to put people into a bin. You got to have starting power, staying power, and finishing power. The starting power guys are the guys with visionaries and good ideas. The staying power are those guys that just show up to work every day and they give you endurance and persistence. And then you got the finishers, the guys that are closers. They get things done. Well, for yourself, I'm generally a finisher, but I have some attributes in the other two categories. Otherwise, if you go down through your list of things to do, once you're done, if you don't have any more input, you're done. You just stagnate. But I like to finish things. And then so I surround myself by hiring other people that are stronger in the starting and stronger in the endurance piece. Beyond that, I think morale is a personal choice. I choose to be happy, enthusiastic, positively energized. Every day presents renewed opportunities to be among your people, be out there with them, help them achieve their dreams, and achieve yours with them. Accomplishing the mission and saving lives with my teammates is good for my morale. Always was.
That's so important to those three different aspects that you described. I think a lot of times we just tend to trend towards being around people who are similar to us. And what we don't realize is that when it comes to completing an assignment or completing a mission or a project, that it really does take all different kinds. If you look at like the Clifton strengths, you have these different kind of areas are like, are you a strategic person? Are you an executor? Are you a relationship builder? And with teams that don't have people who operate heavily in those quadrants, they find that they struggle in certain areas. So I really appreciate that you put that perspective on an assignment where there's the starters, the stayers, and then the finishers, because we really, as leaders, need to be thinking about where can people leverage their strengths and where are they getting the most energy from doing what it is that is their strengths.
So the Army gives you 5 names and says, hey, you got to pick one of those guys. If you go back and you really just can't get along with any one of those 5, you can go back and they'll give you a few more to look at. But I always found if the Sergeant Major of the Army gave you 5 nominations, you better pick one. But most people will look at that thing and try to pick the guy that they have the most in common with. I think that's a failed strategy. I don't need any more infantrymen around me. I can cover the infantry side of the paradigm. So I look for people who are not like me, who don't think like me, who don't do anything like me. They cover dead space on the range card. I'm sure you did a range card in basic training for your rifle, right? Well, you have a range card in your brain too. Who's going to cover that dead space? Well, you do it by hiring people that aren't like you, increasing the diversity of the team. If you want to have good morale, you want to have a good organization, and you want to be able to solve complex problems with increasingly clever solutions, hey, don't hire a bunch of infantrymen. You got to get some different kinds of people in there.
And one thing that I've definitely seen more prevalent, I guess more spoken about in the civilian world, is when we talk about diversity, it's not just racial or religious. There's all of these different kinds of diversity, exactly what you're talking about right now, where it's different jobs, different, of course, backgrounds, just cognitive diversity that really is what makes the team so unique.
I wholeheartedly agree. It's easy to demographically categorize people with skin color, religion, where they were born, all this stuff, but it's intellect. It's what you're passionate about, what you're interested in, both in a professional life and your personal life. You want to get as many different perspectives as possible. And then of course, you have to listen.
So in the civilian or corporate world, which is what we've both switched to, morale plays out a little bit differently than in the military. So what are some of the differences and similarities that you've noticed?
So the medium is generally what's going to be the immediate difference, right? In the civilian world, it's return on investment, bottom line, EBITDA, all these things. Mediums, types of return on investment, stressors among the many other variables may be different, but morale remains unchanged. It's an individual attitude about how you live your life, pursue your daily activities, and interact with other members on your team. I use this quote from Amy Rubin Flett, and I don't know what she was really famous for, but I've stolen this, and this is one of the few things that I've actually attributed. Live less out of habit and more out of intent. So many people get up every morning and it's just like, what are you gonna do? Well, I'm gonna do the same thing I do every day. I get up every morning and I'm like, this is what I intend to get done with my day. The operating environment and circumstances may change, but generally people don't. They want what they want. They may want it in different priorities. People in the military and in the civilian world value being informed. They want to know why. They want to be treated with dignity and respect, and they want opportunities to succeed and advance. This company that I'm in, the one thing that I have made the company do, and then I do them, is the climate surveys and listening sessions. I've done about 20 of them so far. And then I write these nice little pithy reports for the CEO. But at the end of the day, morale is morale. The vehicles, the circumstances, the stressors, the products, the importance, the priorities, ways, means, and ends may all be a little bit different, but the people aren't. They're still motivated by the same things.
It's amazing, though, that you are in a position where you have been open enough that people who don't know you that well know that they can come to you with a problem and that something will then be done. So a lot of times people don't go to leadership because they don't know who they are. And that's more common, unfortunately, than we want to admit that it is. And then B, that nothing's going to be done when they do ask for help. So why bother, right? Then they just feel like they're making waves.
That's a great point. He's like, why do these people call you? And I go, well, I told them if you have a problem, you can call me. I'm going to do something about it. Here's some of these things about morale. And none of these things are unique to the military or unique to civilian. Promote a work-life balance among the people you work with. Invest in trust. You got to get beyond, hey, my door's always open. Well, if your door's always open, but you never come out of it, how approachable are you really? Good job goes a long way. Slap somebody on the back. Oh, but to slap somebody on the back, tell them they're doing a good job? Oh, that means you got to be out of your office. A lot of people don't like to do that. Random acts of kindness. On my first day in the plant, my buddy's taking me around there. I go by an individual who is obviously a Somalian. And so I was like, I put my hand on my chest and, assalamu alaikum. Oh, alaikum assalam. He gives me in reply. My buddy's like, what was that? And I said, may the peace of God be with you. And he said it back to me. And I put my hand over my chest because it's a sign of peace. I'm unarmed and my hand's on my chest, so I'm not going to harm him. And he did the same for me. Well, how do you know that? I go, how do you not? But it doesn't take a lot of study to ask somebody how they're doing, greet them the day, and then move on. Look how they lightened up. One random act of kindness goes a long way. Leading by example is increasingly difficult in both the Army or like I say, the military and the civilian world, because leading by example is hard. And some people don't want to do it. One-on-one communication is very hard for some people, but there's nothing that can replace it. It's the best stuff. This is one I've learned in the civilian world that's a little harder than in the military is, giving your employees or your soldiers tools to ask for feedback. So I think those are some of the things that are really important for morale and for the morale example that you're going to set. And then, of course, hey, we had fun and we'll still get some stuff done.
I really appreciate that you have to know your people, of course, but like you said, those extra steps are really giant leaps to being an inclusive leader. People really want to be seen by their leadership. And when you do those things, like you said, like to you, it was just second nature. Like, of course, you greet people a certain way, you acknowledge certain things. But also, like you said later, it doesn't always occur to people to do that, or maybe they don't have the skills to do that.
I had to go to the baby generals class, and at one of the dinners, my wife and I, we got a seat change. They said, hey, the guest speaker tonight wants you to sit at his table. And then I showed up over the table, and two other guys and their wives with curious looks on their face were on, hey, Stammer, did you get told you had to sit at this table? I go, yep. Yeah, we just got moved too. We all sat down, and he says nothing about why we're there, but he gets up and starts making his remarks, and he was going to go and make three major points in his speech. And the three guys at his table were all the example from which he was going to carry us through this leadership, morale, the importance of individuals kind of a thing. He's like, so Stammer, the reason he's sitting over here is because when I went to go visit him over in Afghanistan, he's a battalion commander. He's got about 1,200 kids. We were there for the better part of about 10 hours, and he knew the name of every one of the people we talked to. You could tell he had a genuine personal relationship with every one of the people he talked to. As he went by, he popped him on the arm, did something, and asked him about their mom or a dad or a brother or whatever. And we went through there in a tiring example of know your people as you know yourself. Because if you don't, how can you tell if Smith is having a good day or a bad day if you don't know what a day looks like? How do you know if they're going to put an arm around a guy and go, hey man, you going to make it? How we doing? Or if you see a guy that's jubilant, like, what's going on? Let's hear it. Oh, my wife just had a baby or whatever. But if you don't know these steady states, how do you know a guy's getting ready to kill himself? You don't. You got to invest in him. And of course, when you do that, you have to invest or expose yourself, right? And I have become a little more introverted as I've gotten older than extroverted. I guess I was just too big of a loudmouth when I was younger, and now I know you should listen more and talk less. Maybe it just took me a while to learn that lesson.
If you were advising a new leader on building morale, what tips or advice would you give them?
I would say it's your responsibility to adjust your leadership techniques and teaching style to accommodate all the learning styles of all your people. It is more important that they learn than you teach. If you can only teach one way, you're only going to affect those people who learn that way. Some people are audio, some people are visual, some people need repetition, some people need to be have a boot put in their butt, some people need to be hugged. Some people are all positive reinforcement and others are all negative reinforcement. So I think it's up to you to figure out how to manipulate your style and give them what they want and in a way they can take it in. It also allows you to capitalize on all the individual characteristics that are going to be necessary for the success of your organization. You know, I can't do your job. You can't do mine. If I don't do mine, we're going to fail. If you don't do yours, we're going to fail. Doesn't really matter what position on the field we play. And generally speaking, I would tell you that if you're a leader and you're going into this company or you're going into something and you're going to have responsibility of building morale, I would say, listen. You may have heard the story 100 times and you may already know the answer and all this, but they may have only told it one time and this is it. And if you cut them off, they're never coming back to you.
When you're seeing people as individuals, how do they need what I'm trying to tell them, right? Communication is such a huge part of being a human, not just of leadership, but of being a person alive. I've had people who, like, somebody will ask a follow-up question and then they just say it again, but louder. And I'm like, they heard you. They don't understand what you're saying.
It's like using an interpreter. If I say it louder in English and he still doesn't speak anything but Farsi, he'll understand it better.
And typically, when people don't understand something, it's because you either went way too fast and they could not keep up with what you were talking about, or they don't have the blocks that will bridge what they know to what you want them to do. So it's just there's something lacking there. So if you can meet them where they are, figure that piece out, and then bring them along with you, then better communication, mostly better results are what happens.
Well, a lot of people skip over telling why to a subordinate. It's hugely important. It's as important for them as it is the boss. Having some context. If you want to go to like the school book solution for building morale too, morale has stages, right? There's going to be a certain amount of morale when somebody arrives to a company. Once they've been there a little while and they start to engage, morale will change a little bit. Once they've been accepted into the group, morale changes a little bit. And then there will always be internal changes within the company. You'll change organizations or move around. And so there'll be departure and re-entry morale issues. In the Army, the best unit in the whole Army is the one I came from, and the worst one is the one I just arrived at. I've heard it 100 times. If you're a new guy, or if you're the boss, it's important to know how long somebody's been there, where are they in their tour length. You never want to ask somebody, well, you can ask them, but you want to gauge the answer with how long they've been there. Because if they've been there less than 90 days, they're struggling. Battle rhythm, language, jargon, whatever it is. If they're in their last 90 days, euphoria, I've accomplished all my goals. And then somewhere in the middle, you get some truth out of the deal.
I was recently telling someone that I had experienced this new personitis. I was excited to be at a new place in this new job. I also didn't really know where I fit. And for me, it was the first time that it happened in a really long time. Because in the military, as you move from one place to another, there's still the overarching norms that you can kind of rely on as you're finding your footing, right? There's always some traction, at least in my experience, there's some traction as you're finding out which way to go. And in being in a completely different type of environment, I just remember sitting at my desk some days being like, I guess I'm doing something. Should I be somewhere? Should I be talking to someone? All these different things. So I think that's a really great point about how at the beginning, people are struggling. Even if you're doing all the right things, not knowing where you fit impacts morale, and it impacts how you show up at work.
I agree. The leader should then look to carve out space for that new person, and explain to them, hey, this is how important you are to the organization. How do you coach somebody who's not doing real well and still, treat them as a valuable member of the team? Well, you can chew somebody's butt, and when they leave, they still feel good about it if you do it right.
It's a whole big thing around coaching the behavior, not the person, right? You're talking about the behavior and not that individual.
Discuss the behavior, not the person, because it looks like you're attacking versus trying to fix something.
When people are quote unquote under attack, under verbal attack, right? Or they think they're in some kind of trouble, that amygdala hijack actually causes their brain to shut down in a way where it can't take in new information for 18 minutes. And that's a long time. That's probably how long you're talking. So in doing that, people then go to their characters being attacked. And I know I've heard this, I'm sure other people have heard it too, where they're like, oh, so basically what they said was, and then it's some attack on their character. Maybe that was said, maybe it wasn't. But when you go into those type of interactions, if you talk about the person, you're this or you're that, versus let's talk about what happened and why and what we can do to fix it, two very different reactions. And the person will actually leave with a plan of action versus just feeling like their boss hates them and then they go and take it out on everybody else.
Yep, I agree.
What happens when a leader does not view people as individuals and just kind of lumps everybody together?
I don't know that you're going to achieve as much. I don't know that you'll achieve anything with a degree of effectiveness or efficiency that you would like to see replicated in other problems, other areas, or stuff like that. Morale will go down, I think. I just get treated like everybody else. that could be a good thing. I get treated like everybody else. I get talked to, I get said hi, somebody slaps me on the back, tells me a good job. Individual draw outs for praise, for attaboys or whatever, that's important for people, right? Because they're human beings and they want to succeed. They want to be told. Most people would prefer positive feedback to negative feedback. Most people would prefer negative feedback in a group forum versus individual forum. And if it's an individual, they definitely don't want it in public. They want it in private. It's not hard. Some people, though, they are going to give it their way. It's their way, no matter how you receive it. How do you recognize a team? Of course, there's always team goals. It's in the Army, just like where I work now. Everybody is dependent on everybody else because it's kind of an assembly line thing where I work. But you can go through and easily recognize and cherish people as individuals for what they bring to the team. And then explain to them why you're so happy with them as individuals, or you're impressed with them, effective this, efficient that, good this. You can then translate that into, and that's why your team is so successful, because you're doing your part on this team.
I also really love that you used the word cherished there. There is a book by Francis Frey and Ann Morris called Unleashed. And in it, they talked about people feel included when they feel safe, they feel welcomed, they feel celebrated, and they feel cherished. They call it the inclusion dial. So depending on how much effort the leader is putting in, shows whether they just feel safe and welcome, which is fine. Everybody should feel safe and welcome. But then do they feel really celebrated and cherished for what they're bringing?
Well, and you're going to go help people as individuals. The fire support NCO in one of my companies, when I was a battalion commander, we were in a big battle. This kid got shot in the thigh. Didn't know if it had the femoral artery or not, but he was bleeding. He was in a lot of pain. Get a medevac. Roger that. We got a medevac. Medevac came and flew away without getting him. Said it was too hot, too close to the battle, too risky. Can't go get him. And the guy flew away. I looked at my pilot. I said, "Hey, turn around." "Okay, go get him." He's like, "That's not our job." I go, "It's our job now." We got that kid, threw him in the C-2 bird, drug him out of there. And about 3 months later, that kid came back to country. "Hey, I just want to come in and say thank you to you guys." I'm like, "For what?" "Well, you came and got me." "Dude, I'd have came and got you no matter who you were. But dude, that's what we do." He's like, "Well, you guys could all got killed." There was a possibility. Dude, you'd already been shot. And there was no possibility about that. That happened. And nobody knew whether you were going to live through it. What am I going to give you? Just a roll of the dice, or am I going to try to impact that? Because I'm pretty sure your family would have voted for me to pick you up, because you're pretty important to them. You're pretty important to us, and we're glad you're back. Now get your butt out of here and go back to the line and do your job. If you're a leader, though, that doesn't value the people as individuals or doesn't cherish them like that, do you still make those decisions to go get them when they're in trouble? Or do you put it on the organization to do it? And if the organization doesn't do it, do you make exceptions?
There is a certain level of accountability and ownership that leaders have, that it's like when you're walking around your post and you see trash and you pick it up, not because it's your trash, but because this is where I work, this is my post. So I think that when it comes to certain decisions, when people have this ownership and this accountability for what they do and their role in things, and they understand the responsibility and authority that they have, that they're more likely to do that. But unfortunately, we have so many organizations, military and otherwise, where people can hide things in an organization and they can point. So like everybody's pointing, so that ultimately it seems like nobody is responsible, or everybody else is to blame.
You get down to something that's of a greater import as well, though. Civility. And where is civility in the workplace? Where is civility in the military? So I was a general. I'm positive I opened a door for you somewhere. I know that because I open doors for ladies. That's what I do. I mean, that's what you're supposed to do. I taught my kid to do that. I say yes, ma'am, and no, ma'am, or yes, sir, and no, sir. If I meet somebody for the first time, I'll call them, Mr. or Miss so-and-so. I'll use Mr. first name and Miss first name sometimes. And sometimes I think it makes people feel uncomfortable, and I'm just trying to be respectful and, get along, get off on the right foot and all this stuff. But civility, in my civilian company, I just built it's about 30 slides, regrettably. First time I did PowerPoint since the 90s, by the way, on civility. And I'm going to teach it to a bunch of managers because they don't treat their people well. They treat them like they're an asset. They're not a widget. They're not a file folder. They're a person. And at the end of the day, they're just as important to this organization as you are.
You are the second person I've talked to this week who has mentioned civility, and I love that. It's so important. And Christine Porath, she wrote a book called Civility in the Workplace, and then she had this really great Harvard Business Review article on the price of incivility. And it's these like little things where it's beyond basic manners. It's this caring for people, but it's interesting how people just don't, I don't want to say don't do it, but it's lacking. When have you been surprised by someone who is performing well outside of their expected role?
Just at Army South, as we would bring in these big visitors, I would take them around through our different collection apparatus and show them how we would do business. The Secretary of the Army came. The briefers, there was one Chief Warrant Officer 2, there was one sergeant, and the rest were E3s and E4s. And I took him around. Their bosses were all behind me, but this one young gal, she was a Spec 4, she got up there and she briefed how she had come up with the information that she came up with and the importance of it and what it resulted in. But the secretary's looking around. He's like, "You're kidding me. She did that." I'm like, "Well, she's had some help, but she's the one that found the initial piece of information and doggedly followed it, went through leadership, went and coordinated with the HUMINT folks, with the SIGINT folks, with all these other intelligence apparatus people, and she put it all together. And then she briefed her boss, and her boss believed her, took it off the chain, and I believed her, and that's why she's briefing it, not me." But when I first mentioned that, hey, here's what we're going to do when the secretary comes, she's briefing. And the boss was like, "Well, sir, I think I should do it." And I go, "Well, thank you for thinking that, but I don't think that, so don't ever mention it again. If I even think you're going to interrupt her, you won't be here this day." If you're the leader of the organization or the commander, so many of them think they got to play quarterback every single play. But I think the commander especially, but leaders in general should be linemen. If you follow the football analogy, what do linemen do? Block. They remove obstacles from the path for others to succeed. Generally, the guy that's removing the obstacles has some talent, some capability, some strength, some rank that allows only him to do that. So as a commander, I can remove obstacles because I can make them go away, or I can handle them, or I will take them on to allow those younger folks to succeed. So I think more commanders should view themselves in the turn as blocking and moving those obstacles for everybody else on the team to succeed versus being the quarterback on every single play and stealing the successes of others and the spotlight. You just don't need that. They need it. I don't know if it's as much as I'm surprised by the people when they do something that well. I think what surprises me is when leaders make conscious decisions not to give the youngest folks around opportunities to succeed. They steal it from them because, "Oh, I know I can do this easy. Ooh, I'm going to do that for you." No, let them do it. Yeah, every now and then they might embarrass you. They might not do so well. And the big boss may look around and go, "Hey, what was that?" I go, "Hey, sir, that kid's nervous. You're making him nervous. It's your fault, not his."
For a long time, I've said that one of the major tasks of leaders is to remove obstacles. It's to get things out of your way, because some people have this amazing technical knowledge, or they're subject matter experts in leading in this information and technical way. And the best thing I can do is to make sure that they can do that. So what's preventing you from doing that? Let's get that out of the way. So I really love that analogy.
Well, it's like you, when we went to Chile, we have people on the national security team that want to talk to her. Okay, do we get to go? No. Only smart people can go. You're not in that crowd. But some of the others were like, "Hey, sir, you really don't know her that well. You're going to let her go over and do this?" I go, "Well, Reinhard knows her. And what I've seen of her, nothing indicates to me that she's not the smartest person in the room. How about you? I mean, you're not going over there. So, I mean, what is she going to do? Make us all look good? Awesome. I still remember that time. I think we were in Brazil. I sat behind that couch in the foyer there, and you and Sergeant Major went back and forth for like 5 minutes, and it was like a tennis match. I was going back and forth. And after about 5 minutes, I was like, what the heck are you guys talking about? I mean, you guys were engrossed in this conversation. I mean, it was give and take, and we might as well have been speaking Mandarin. And then I just walked away going, I don't speak Java, and I'll move on. But you got to trust people.
As a leader, how do you cultivate human understanding among your team?
You just have to get out there and do it. I had some technical help on my calendar to where I could run some diagnostics and some statistics on where and categorize where I spent my time. Because I said I want to spend 50% of my time doing something with a group of people. Okay, set it up the calendar and start doing it. I'm going to counsel people once a quarter. Put it in the calendar and set up some analytics and track it. Because if it's not in your calendar, it's not getting done. We'll get too busy. There was some little shiny squirrel will come up and we'll off we'll go into something. Or the really painfully, awkwardly introverted people will just sit in their office all day, hoping nobody knocks. But you have to get out there. There was a guy way back in the day. He's written movies. He's a very well-known figure. And he came with his photographer, and he came under the auspices of, I really want to see what you guys are doing with all these women in Afghanistan, because we built an all-girls school. I got women to vote in Day Chopin during that election. He was there for a while, and he comes up to me one day and goes, I've been doing all this stuff with good governance and the women's school and girls and all this, but, we really kind of need to see some of the shit too. And I was like, you're going to regret the day you ever said that. You'll regret it for the rest of your life. I said, well, I'll take you out. And it was it wasn't very long, a day or two later. I said, go find those two guys. Tell them to get over here. Tell them to bring a pack with some water and some extra clothes. They showed up with a little bit of stuff. It's like, okay, we're going to go to the shit. We got up to the airfield. Helicopters were not quite there yet. And I said, you're going with those guys. He's like, what do you mean I'm going with those guys? He's like, I thought I was going with you. Oh, no, you don't go fight with me. You go to fight with those guys. And I took him over there and I explained to the guys, hey, this guy's going with you. He gets hurt, you guys are all fired. So do a good job. 10 days later, I saw him again, and he looks terrible. His clothes are torn. He's dirty. He's aged 10 years. And I was like, hey, man, so how's it been? He's like, where the hell have you been? I go, well, for the last 10 days, until we got in the helicopters to come back here about an hour ago, I was never more than a kilometer from you. He's like, you're kidding me. I was like, no, man, there's a lot going on out there. I was like, so how was it? He goes, well, we got out of the helicopter, it flew away, and they shot an RPG at us. And then it went downhill from there for 10 straight days. I was like, typical day in the office, man. It's awesome. That's how you develop human connections. They know you're going to be there with them when it's the worst.
So in building this human connection and this understanding among people, listening, of course, is very important, not only there, but at every level of an organization. So how do listening skills need to change as you advance in leadership?
So I have some pretty aggressive techniques on listening. You've probably seen some. You've never seen me have a cup of coffee or a bottle of water at a meeting. I won't take it. I've never done it. I have not forbid that from happening, but I forbid food, chow. I mean, I had some major show up at one of my meetings with a plate of food. It's like, dude, goodbye. You're obviously not here to engage. So I go there and I'm there to listen, to pay attention, listen with intent. No drinks or snacks. They distract. I'm either here to get information or make a decision. Both require my undivided attention. And so I'm going to listen. Admittedly, I listened to better the older I got. I tried to focus my questions to not stump the chump, but to further the understanding or to further my decision-making. I learned later in life how to make a point without making a kill, because there's a very fine art. Make your point, don't make a kill. And then I found speak at the end and deliver to the audience or deliver to the briefer what he asked for you when you got there. Don't leave and go, okay, I'll take that under advisement. I'll get back to you in a week in a memo. No, you should have done your homework. You should have been prepared. You knew it was on your calendar, and you should come prepared to give a decision, because that promotes compelling to irreversible momentum for the organization. They just wasted their damn time if you're going to deliver at the end and just bow out and say, well, I'll go cover this with a few of my really important advisors, and then I'll give you a decision. No, you're the best guy. You can categorize the listening types. I think they're an appreciative listening style, an empathetic listening style, a comprehensive listening style, and a critical listening style. I try to view all my listening as critical, because I'm looking for something, a reason to augment my argument or rebut my counter argument, or if something new comes out there, change.
And in listening, there's different styles, and there's also these different levels. Oscar Trimboli talks about these 5 levels where first you have to listen to yourself. What else is going on in your head that is preventing you from actually being a good listener to someone else? And then he goes through content and context and what's unsaid, and then listening for meaning. So people's body language and their tone, and then of course the words that they choose, all of those things are speaking to you, right? People are telling you a lot more than just the words. So listening is really holistic.
Well, and that's the thing too. No coffee, no drinks, no water. Write things down. Pay attention. Be a participant. I tell people all the time, hey, are you going to be an active participant in your own life? Dude, get in the field. It's your life, man. But you can apply that to meetings or emails or whatever.
How can leaders be sympathetic to an individual's failings while still pushing their development further?
I really like this question. I really like all the concepts behind it. And it goes back to what we said earlier. You don't attack the person. You try to figure out what the problem it is. So you listen first, and you ask probing questions to understand why it occurred, why it is that this thing failed, not why did they fail. You might get it back down to, was it willpower or way power? Does this guy have the willpower to get things done, or did he have a way power problem? Somebody did not remove an obstacle. Somebody was an obstacle. Disassemble the problem, look for precursors. The boss may have failed him and doomed him to fail by asking the wrong question or assigning the wrong task. So using some of that language you used, you got to look for a comprehensive, holistic solution. Usually more than one contributes to failure. Explain why employee success is so important to other employees, to the team, and to the company. It's important that you understand, hey, this was wrong. Here's where we tried to figure out why it was wrong. Here's how we can never do it again that way. But here's why it's so important to you, the other people on your team, the bigger team, and the company. Once the issue is fully understood, assign areas and timelines for improvement. Opportunities to employ new tools, new techniques that will demonstrate improvement. Provide accountability, and then feedback. And then again, make your points without making a kill. If you're a good leader, you can make all your constructive feedback that leaves an employee feeling good about the situation and hopeful. Most folks want to do well. They want to succeed. You teach them how to succeed and provide them opportunities, and just keep doing it over again. And focus on fixing problems, not fixing blame.
What leadership advice would you offer current leaders in any organization?
Okay, so my first one, give your trust. You ever heard that trust has to be earned and all this stuff? Okay, whoever says you got to earn my trust, well, he's an arrogant ass. I say just give it away. First time you meet somebody, I trust you inherently, 100%. Only you can give it back. And it just speeds up the relationship. It speeds up productivity, efficiency, effectiveness. So what's the point in making people earn your trust? Who the hell are you? And what are you doing to earn theirs? Is it simultaneous or is it sequential? Giving trust immediately increases the effectiveness, the efficiency, morale, and esprit. You're a part of the team. Trust me quick. Just makes us a better team quicker. Some people may disappoint you along the line. Fine. I'm sure you've written letters of recommendation for people. I've written letters of recommendation for people who then have used those letters of recommendation to fail. Do you pass that stinging failure on to the next guy who asks you for a letter of recommendation, or you just write it? No, you have to write it. One guy fails you because you wrote him a letter of recommendation doesn't mean you stop writing them. Everybody deserves their fair chance. One guy failed. Okay, move on. So somebody may disappoint you, but there's no reason to abandon the concept because the vast majority of people are going to try to do the best they can. They're loyal patriots and they're going to work their ass off. Just give them the frickin' trust. The whole be a lineman, not a quarterback thing. I know it's a football analogy, but commanders and leaders got to do those things that only commanders and leaders can do. Let the other people have the quarterback opportunities because they don't have the rank or the experience, the knowledge, the influence to get rid of the obstacle. They can accomplish the task. Let them do it. The whole listen to understand, not just respond or wait for your turn to talk. These people don't approach leaders lightly, generally speaking. Let them talk. Don't interrupt them. And then I tell them, hey, remember, man, it's about developing people, not just accomplishing tasks. If you develop people, the tasks all get accomplished. Go figure.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Equipping Leaders. This season, there is an associated blog for each podcast episode, which can be found on my website, natashacheyenne.com, under Leadership Journal. My website also features other leadership development content, such as frameworks, book recommendations, a weekly newsletter, and other downloadable content. You can also follow me on Instagram at novel_Natasha and on Twitter and Facebook at Natasha Cheyenne. Join me next week for another episode.